Good morning, I'm Rowena Crosby.
And I'm Deborah Renner, and we're your co-hosts for this show. Thank you for joining us for the next 17 minutes for your Invisible Toolbox. The show is sponsored by Tero International that features the book Row and I co-authored, and every week we look at a tool for working more effectively with others. And today we are so excited to be out on Row's patio. Perfect place for what we're going to talk about today. Always a wonderful place to film out here.
It's very fun, and it's especially appropriate because we're going to be talking about superstitions, and if we're lucky we'll get some of my black cats to get into the shot here, and hopefully the rain holds off for us. So we have a question for you. Do you believe in magic? Maybe you quickly answered that question by saying no, but consider this. Do you believe in luck, karma, jinxes, destiny? Or how many of us haven't said this particular phrase? Everything happens for a reason.
Oh, yeah. Well, if you answered yes to any of these, you do believe in magic and superstitions, according to Matthew Hudson. He's an author and a former editor of Psychology Today.
And these beliefs are very common. Think about how many times that phrase, knock on wood, is used, or the idea of a four-leaf clover being lucky, or the act of making a wish on your candles, on your birthday cake. We all do those things.
And if you're a baseball fan, you know it was pretty widely accepted idea that the Chicago Cubs were cursed. They finally won that World Series after 108 years. And additionally, the Harvard Business Review reports that around 80% of high-rise buildings around the world do not have a 13th floor.
Now, you know they do have a 13th floor, they just don't call it that. You may get the chance to notice some of my black cats wandering around. I get greeted by 9 of them every single morning, and that's part of my morning routine, is to feed them before I go to work. There's a lot of folklore around black cats, that witches exist and they can shapeshift into black cats. And so for a lot of people, black cats are perceived as a symbol of omens or bad luck. For me, they're actually a source of great comfort and inspiration.
Well, I just told one of them not to cross my path on my way in today.
I guarantee your path was crossed when you came in here.
All of this is to say it's pretty normal to believe in some kind of superstition, but these beliefs aren't always necessarily a bad thing. Matthew Hudson argues that believing in magic can actually help us make sense of things that are senseless, and it can bring us comfort, agency, and a sense of control.
And there's another reason that superstitions might not be too bad, and it's really what we're going to explore today. Research has shown they actually might help us perform better.
That's true. And that doesn't mean that one of your shirts has supernatural powers, which will cause you to ace a presentation, but wearing it might give you more confidence, and that can lead to a higher probability of success.
I will never forget that lucky suit of yours. Deb had this suit that she wore for all of her keynotes for a really long time. I remember when the dry cleaners lost it. That was really bad. So being superstitious, carrying around certain objects, having a little routine, that might actually help us with our success as long as we don't take it a little bit too far.
And that's what we're going to talk about today. Our invisible tool of the week is selecting a trigger and setting a goal and choosing that trigger or that object that will constantly remind you of your goal.
And during our development challenge, we're actually going to take you through a process you can use to imprint a trigger so that it can be that object for you.
And in the field guide, we're going to discuss a really fascinating psychological study of the effectiveness of superstitions and lucky charms. This is not to miss. It's really interesting. Researchers conducted several experiments to get the data we're going to share.
And we've got 2 terrific social media posts that we're going to feature for you today. One is a short TED Talk on the origins and the effectiveness of superstitions. And the other is a Forbes article, or a Forbes interview with Matthew Hudson, and he discusses the research behind superstitions and magical beliefs.
So if you're following along in your Invisible Toolbox, we're on chapter 91. It's titled In the Zone, and if you don't have your own copy, scroll down, click the link below, and get yours. Let's get started.
So many sports stars have superstitions. So if any of you like to follow sports, you've probably seen some of these. And they are things these folks really believe help them during games. So Jason Gamby, I think I'm saying the name right, he played for the New York Yankees. Get this, he had a gold thong that he wore whenever he was in a slump. And not to be outdone, several of his teammates would wear the gold thong when they were in a slump. So they really believed in the powers of it.
They did. Well, Serena Williams has said that she doesn't change her socks throughout a tournament run, and there are countless athletes who will not shave their beards during playoff time.
Oh yeah, the rituals around that are amazing. And on the flip side, there's some athletes who avoid items because of a fear of losing. So at NASCAR events, get this, you'll almost never find peanuts in the shell, and that's because of rumors of the number of peanut shells that were found in wrecked cars.
Oh my gosh. And sports lore suggests that if you appear on the cover of Sports Illustrated or on the cover of Madden NFL video games, that will negatively affect your performance if you're an athlete.
So can something as simple as a magazine or a video cover really cause a player's performance to decline? Most likely not. But it can psych a player into thinking that their performance will decline, and that's where the power is.
And superstitions are not limited to sports. Entrepreneurs have several examples of businesses utilizing superstitions. Walmart employees begin every day with a cheer, and salespeople at Yelp bang a gong every time they make a sale. Actually, we used to do that at Tero.
We did. Now we're on 2 floors.
Yeah.
I guess we need a bigger gong. When he was just starting his career, Hollywood actor Jim Carrey wrote himself a check for $10 million, and it said he carried it around in his wallet until he was able to cash it.
So clearly we can employ superstitions to help us achieve our goals, but we got to make sure they don't distract us from our work or distract our colleagues.
So we're going to talk about this. Let's take a look at our invisible tool of the week. The tool itself is to select a trigger. You'll find it in chapter 91 of the book.
So it's time to turn to page 217 of our book, where you can read all about this week's invisible tool.
So now that we've discussed the impact that superstitions can have on our performance, do you believe that you could use superstitions to help you with your own career success? It's actually going to be easier than you might think it is. Look where we are right now. We're sitting in my beautiful yard, and for many people, just time in nature serves as a trigger to foster creativity and good positive emotions. I'll often wander around in these fields here with my dogs to trigger that emotion.
So people in the workplace can use all kinds of triggers to get them in the zone and to bring them confidence and move them towards their goals. Those triggers can include our clothing, symbolic items, music, pictures, or certain routines that we do.
Absolutely. So again, it's not the item or the routine. So it isn't the baseball player's gold thong. It isn't the act of ringing the gong. Those mostly don't have supernatural powers that guarantee the success. So that's great comfort to all of us. If you want to use this, you don't actually have to find an item that has intrinsic supernatural powers in it.
All you have to do is set a goal, give it some attention, and choose a physical item that's going to remind you of that goal. So for example, if your goal is to generate a certain amount of sales in a particular quarter, you could pick a coin and have that in your pocket during every sales presentation.
And then every time you become aware of the coin, you feel it, you look at it, that will ideally remind you of the goal. I know I've got lucky nail polish. I have 2 different shades depending on what my goals for the day happen to be.
However, U.S. News notes it's definitely possible to take this idea way too far. If you've selected a routine or a trigger, that you have to ask yourself, is this in any way interfering with my job or my work or my coworkers?
Yes, and you shouldn't make decisions based solely on your superstitions. And that is a fine line. We get excited about some of these things, but we have to be able to separate ourselves from them. So for example, if you're planning a meeting and it's going to be an inconvenient time, but that's your special meeting time, that might be getting in the way of getting things done. So don't just go with your lucky time and let it interfere with other schedules.
In that case, you'd want to take a step back and really remember that while triggers can really help boost your confidence, they're just one way to do that. Preparation and focus can do that as well.
Exactly. So we encourage you to select a trigger, use it as a physical symbol to remind you of what you want to be focused on and to tap into those positive emotions, but don't allow it to dictate how you do your work.
Well, it's time for our development challenge of the week, and this week it's all about imprinting triggers. We actually teach this in our Influence and our Beyond Compromise negotiation courses. Imprinting involves recognizing and choosing an emotional state that will bring us the best success.
Yeah, we already have triggers, conscious and unconscious. You can probably think of an emotional state that is evoked simply by smelling a certain scent,
Yeah.
for better or for worse. So all of this isn't just hocus pocus stuff. We're talking about you already have triggers. The question is, do you decide that you want to consciously choose them to help you? So these are going to be objects, they're going to be situations, they're going to be people that can allow you to trigger the correct emotional state. And then you've got to decide which emotional state. So do I want to be confident, or if I'm having trouble sleeping at night, I might want a trigger that's going to put me into a state of more quiet comfort.
Exactly. So this week we challenge you to take the following steps. You might want to write these down. First, you want to figure out for you, what is your desired emotional state? That'll be different depending on your goal, and it's different for every individual.
And then the second thing you'll want to do is actually choose a trigger. So pick something that's fairly easily available to you. So a small good luck charm that you can just carry around or wear, an article of clothing, a particular scent, a food item. Some people will actually even choose a physical action like touching their thumb and their baby finger together, and that will help trigger that emotion.
That's something they can always do.
They can always
have it with them. So after you pick your trigger, you're going to want to access your desired emotional state. So you want to either imprint your trigger while you're already feeling that way, or you want to access a time in which you felt that way and really think about that.
And this is the trick, is to get in the emotional state while you've got the trigger. And as soon as you feel that emotional state starting to dissipate, get rid of the trigger, because we're trying to link these two things.
And when the feeling begins to diminish, then you're going to want to break the emotional state completely. So that might be doing something like saying your social security number backwards, something that really makes you become very, very conscious.
Yeah, try doing that. Saying the alphabet or social security number backwards, you have to get conscious, and that will break state. And like anything in life, the more that you do this exercise, the more it's going to become part of who you are, and the easier it'll be to actually access that emotional state.
Yeah, and after you've imprinted the trigger, you can access the emotional state at any given time. It really has worked for so many people, and it's something we do have the power to do.
We do. And as you've probably gathered from our show today, this is less about luck and probably more about psychology. So the charm is lucky to us because of how it makes us feel.
Exactly. So when we take the steps this week for this development challenge, you'll always be able to have something that makes you feel ready to tackle a goal or a new challenge.
Well, we're excited to share with you in our Field Guide segment an interesting study, actually several of them, from 2010 on the benefits and the consequences of superstitions. And the researchers conducted a variety of experiments to see what impact superstition had on the performance of their research subjects.
These were really interesting. In the first experiment, they had 28 university students putt a ball. And they told some students that the ball they were about to use was lucky, and they told others that it was just the ball that everyone had used so far.
And so what happened? Well, it turned out that the students that were putting the lucky balls did statistically significantly better than those who were using the ordinary balls.
In the second experiment, participants engaged in a motor dexterity test, and the researchers told some of them, "I'll keep my fingers crossed for you. That's a sign of luck."
Yes.
And participants who were given that encouragement completed the task more quickly.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
So apparently people around us matter. In another experiment, the participants were asked to bring their lucky charm to the experiment with them, and then they had to give the charm to the researchers who wanted to take a photograph of them.
Okay.
So half the volunteers got the lucky charm back before the experiment. The other half didn't get it back until afterwards.
So can you guess what happened? The participants who did get their lucky charm back did better on a memory test. And the last experiment researchers conducted took the concept even further. Participants brought their lucky charms to an anagram test, and the researchers either took it before or not.
So no surprise, you can guess, the participants who had their charm with them during the anagram test not only performed better, they also reported that they felt more confident and more capable.
So what does this tell us? Well, first of all, it shows that we all hold some kind of superstition. A lot of times we think it's creepy to be superstitious, but the fact is everybody's superstitious to some degree.
And superstitions can actually help us increase our confidence and perform better.
Yeah.
as long as we don't take them too far. And these experiments really, I think, reflect that.
Yes, we've covered a lot today. Now it's time to take a look at our social media posts of the week.
And those of you that follow Tero on social media already know we post useful links and content several times every day. We're going to take a look at 2 of those featured posts right now.
And our first post is going to be on all Tero social media today, and it is a short TED video, not to miss. It's going to give some explanation about why superstitions might work. It also dives into some of the more popular superstitions like knocking on wood or the number 13 and where those originated. This is a really interesting video. Check it out on our platforms today.
And our second featured post is that interview with Matthew Hudson in Forbes that we've referenced today. He's the author and former editor of Psychology Today. And in this interview, he's going to talk about the ways we engage in superstitious or magical thinking. We'll find that on all Tero social media platforms on Wednesday. Well, thanks for joining us today. If you missed any portion of the program or you'd like to share it with others, you'll find the entire program on Tero's YouTube channel. Join us again next Monday morning at 9:03 Central Time, where we will explore another tool in your Invisible Toolbox.
Well, thanks for having us at your garden today, out in your
Absolutely.
yard. It's been so fun. We welcome you now. It's your turn to email your ideas to ideas@yourinvisibletooolbox.com. We love to have your ideas for future shows. Find us on your favorite social media platform, and if you haven't subscribed to Tero's YouTube channel, subscribe today. You'll be alerted when future shows air. You'll see a lot of other things out there as well. A thank you to Kyle Plummer, our director and our camera person today.
And thanks to all of you for joining us. And that's a wrap.